Good morning, traders. Welcome to today's market review. This is Fred Razak at CM Trading. Today's October 4th, 2019, and today is Friday morning. So looking at the major economic events of the day at 2:30 South African time out of the United States, the big number for the month, non-farm payroll number coming out. And then later today at 8 o'clock South African time, that's 8 p.m., Fed Chairman Powell will be speaking as well. Now taking a look at the markets, starting out with the Forex symbols, US dollar is weaker right before the NFPs. That's usually a rotational sign. And then taking a look at the indices, the Dow Jones bounces yesterday, but the question is what's going to happen next? Was it a dead cat bounce or will it continue going up higher? We'll take a look at that as well. And looking at the commodity, gold holds its gain while oil is pretty much unchanged. And lastly, looking at the stock, Microsoft leads the pack in that nice rally that we had yesterday. But let's take a look at the markets and see what we can expect from today's trading. So we're first taking a look here at the EURUSD, and you can see we pretty much consolidated at this level of 109-ish level, as you can see right here. The question is, will it bounce? Okay, that's the next real question of will this take it higher or will it sell off? Just be aware that you do have a support level of 109-ish level. If the number comes out and it breaks through this 109, we could see it further decline to the 108-ish level. That's over 100 pip on the downside. So let's see if that actually forays later today. Now looking at the USDCAD, also at a pivot point. This we were looking at yesterday quite closely at this 133 resistance level. The question is whether or not it's going to break above it or it's going to retrace below it. And so there's a little bit of a rotation now as we're going into this NFP. The dollar is looking weak, okay, at least for the interim. The question is that whether or not this is going to continue looking weak into this number. But you do want to know these levels because if they do get broken in either direction, you want to be sure to jump into it. Okay, as soon as this number comes out, I do imagine that we'll have a correctional move in possibly a counter direction. Okay, but we are at a resistance level, so it is expected to sell off. But in case it doesn't, it may break into that next momentum move on the upside. So just be aware of that as that going into that number today. Now looking at gold, this was a nice little play yesterday. Not much changing here. Okay, but if it does look like a small head and shoulder formation, okay, there's one shoulder, there's your second shoulder, that's your head. But the question or not whether or not it's going to continue sustaining itself at this area of 109 or is it going to sell off. But the number will let us know today with the NFP, especially if it's a positive number. We do want to know and we do want to jump on top of that. Now looking at the Dow Jones, this is yesterday's move up above 300 points from its capitulation of 25,760-ish level to 26,129-ish level. A nice little bounce for there. The question is whether or not this was a dead cat bounce, which means that it's going to challenge this 25,750-ish level. Now, the markets are driven by a few things right now. Firstly, by news of political news that's happening in the markets right now. Secondly, by trade negotiations that are happening. And thirdly, and lastly, believe it or not, the economic news. Okay, so really, until you actually regain your consciousness and kind of focus again about what's happening in the markets, the economic news then becomes the primary source of news that is affecting the market. So really very important to understand this as we enter today's trading, that this news events are going to really propel the markets. Now, there's a big upside to this if the correction is on the upside. If the NFP comes out positive, we may see a nice rally today going into the weekend, but possibly unlikely, okay, because we are still quote unquote on sell-off months. October, November are sell-off months. Now looking at Microsoft, a nice little bounce. What I want to highlight here is that we're at support levels. Okay, we hit this 133 yesterday, and you can see pretty much that this was a nice lower range, okay, support range there at 133. So the fact that we bounced off of it is quite positive, okay, but it has to sustain this growth and possibly break the outer limit, okay. If it did break this 133 or it does break it later today, we could see it retrace to the downside to the 130-ish level. Now, if you look at many of the stocks, they look like this as well, okay. If we look at some of the bank stocks, JP Morgan, okay, retracing a little bit. This is a 1 hour chart. Let's take out a 4 hour chart, even a daily chart, just to give us a bigger perspective of it. But it should be turning around here. okay, and quote unquote should be, because this was previous resistance, subsequent support, but I'd like to see those numbers actually come in and to give us that positive spin. But we still need to get that positive spin to actually get us out there. So just, be aware this number is coming out at 2:30 South African time. The NFP, obviously, trade responsibly, be careful, make sure to put in stop losses, and have a successful day and a beautiful weekend. Thank you.